Vayari Tarata Chati Swavigaswara Tin Vidayadi Kabaye Mujantija Suraya Tejo Varimida Jata Vinimayo Jatra Tishakumusya
Satyam Param Dhimahi
Damnasvena Sada Nirastakuhakam Satyam Param Dhimahi.
O my Lord Shri Krishna, son of Vasudeva,
O my Lord Shri Krishna son of Vasudeva,
all-pervading personality of Godhead,
O all-pervading personality
I
of
offer my
God,
respectful obeisance unto you.
I offer my respectful obeisances unto you.
I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute truth,
I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute truth,
and the primeval cause of all causes,
and the primeval cause of all causes,
of the creation, sustenance, and destruction of manifested universes.
of the creation, sustenance, and destruction of manifested universes.
He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations.
He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations.
And he is independent because there's no other cause beyond him.
And he is independent because there is no other cause beyond him.
It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge into the heart of Brahmaji,
It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge into the heart of Brahma,
the original living being.
the original living being.
By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion,
By him even the great sages and demigods are placed
as one is
into illusion.
bewildered by the illusory representations
As one is bewildered by the illusory
of water, seen or
representations
fire, or land, seen or water.
of water, and the fire, land, sea,
Only
and
because
water.
of him do the material universes,
Only because of him do the material universe,
temporarily manifested by the reactions of the three modes of nature,
temporarily manifested by the reaction of the three modes of nature,
appear factual, although they're unreal.
appear factual, although they are real.
I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri Krishna,
I therefore meditate upon him, Lord
who is eternally existent in the transcendental
who
abode,
is eternally existent in the transcendental
which is
abode,
forever free from the illusory representations of the material world.
which is forever free from the illusory representation of
I
material.
meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth.
I meditate upon him for he is the absolute
Dharma projita kaitravatra,
Dharma Prajita Kaitavut
paramo nirmatsaranam satam,
Brahmo Nirmashranam Satam
vedyam vastavam atra vastu,
Vedyam Vastavam Astra Vastu
shivadam tapa trayon mulanam,
Shivadam Tapu Tremanam
Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni Krite,
Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni
kim va purir ishvaraha,
Kimvape
sadyo hridi avarudhyate tra,
Sadyo Ridya Vridyati
krite behi sususabhistakshanat,
Kritivhi Shushubhis Tatkana
completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated.
completely rejecting all religious activities which
This
material.
Bhagavata Purana propounds the highest truth,
This Bhagavad Purana Purana
which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in heart.
which is understandable by those who are fully pure.
The highest truth is reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all.
The highest truth, the reality distinguished from illusion for the world.
Such truth uproots the threefold miseries.
Such truth uproots the threefold.
This beautiful Bhagavatam compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva in his maturity
This beautiful Bhagavatam compiled by Krishna Vyasadeva's maturity
is sufficient in itself for God realization.
is sufficient itself for God.
What is the need of any other scripture?
What is the need of the other
As
scripture?
soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam,
As soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of
by
God,
this culture of knowledge,
by this culture,
the Supreme Lord is established within his heart.
whom Lord is established within his
Nigama kalpataror galitam phalam,
Nigamakal Pataror Galitam
sukhamukad amrita dravya samyutam,
Shukamukhar Mritadrava Sanjay
pibata Bhagavatam rasam alayam,
Vivata Bhagavatam Rasamaya
muhur ahoraska bhuvibhavukaha.
Mura Horasika Bhagavad.
O expert and thoughtful men, relish Srimad Bhagavatam,
O expert and thoughtful man, relish my
the mature fruit of the desired true Vedic literatures.
The mature fruit, the desired truth, very glorious.
Yeah. This beautiful Bhagavatam compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva in his maturity. Mature fruit of the divine. What is it?
It emanated.
It emanated from the lips of C. Sukadeva Goswami.
It emanated from the least, which is sugar.
Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful.
Therefore, this fruit has become. even
Although
more
its nectarian juice was already relishable for all,
tasteful. Although its nectarian juice was already
including liberated souls.
including liberals.
Shinvatam Swakata Krishna,
Shramvatam Swakata Krishna.
Punya Shravana Kirtana,
Punya Shravana Kirtana.
Hiryantaksto Hi Bhadrani,
Vidyantasto Hyabha.
Vidunati Suhitsatam. to hear about Krishna from Vedic literatures,
to hear about Krishna from Vedic
or
literature,
to hear from him directly through the Bhagavad Gita,
or to hear from him directly,
is itself righteous activity.
it is self-righteous activity.
And for one who hears about Krishna,
For one who hears about Krishna,
Lord Krishna is dwelling in everyone's heart,
Lord Krishna is dwelling within
acts as a
everyone's
best-wishing friend,
acts as the
and
best
purifies the devotee who constantly engages in hearing of him.
and purifies the devotee who constantly engaged in
Nasta presu abhadresu
Nasta Preshwabha
nityam bhagavata sevaya
Nityam Bhagavata Seva
bhagavati uttama-sloke
Bhagavati Uttama Shloki
bhaktir bhavati naistiki.
Bhakti Bhavati Nasti.
In this way, a devotee naturally develops his dormant transcendental knowledge.
In this way, the devotee naturally develops his dormant transcendental
As he hears
knowledge.
more about Krishna from the Bhagavatam
As he hears more about Krishna from the
and
Bhagavad
from the devotees,
and from the devotee,
he becomes fixed in the devotional service of the Lord.
he becomes fixed in the devotional service.
Tadarajastamo bhava
Tada Rajastamo Bhava
kamalobodayaschaye
Amalubhadayascha
cheta etairanabhidam
Chaitaitaranavi
stitvam sattve prasidati.
Sitam Sadve Prasid.
By development of devotional service,
By development of devotional
one becomes freed from the modes of passion and ignorance,
one becomes freed from the mode of passion,
and thus material lust and avarice are diminished.
and this material lust and avarice.
Evam prasana manaso
Evam Prasannamanas
bhagavad bhakti yogataha
Bhagavat Bhakti
bhagavad tattva vijnanam
Bhagavat Tattva
mukta sangasya jayate.
Mukta Sangha Sijaya.
When these impurities are wiped away,
When these impurities are wiped
the
away,
candidate remains steady in his position of pure goodness,
the candidate remains steady in position,
becomes enlivened by devotional service,
becomes enlivened by devotion,
and understands the science of God perfectly.
and understands the science of God. perfectly.
Vidyate hridaya grantis,
Vidyate Hridaya Grantis,
chidyante sarva samsaya,
Chidyante Sarva Samsaya,
siyante chasya karmani,
Chidyante Chakarmani,
drista evat manishware.
Drusta Evadmanish.
Thus, bhakti yoga severs the hard knot of material affection
Thus the Bhakti Yoga serves the heart of material
and enables one to come at once to the stage of a samsayam samagram,
and enables us to come at once to the stage of assumptions,
understanding of the supreme absolute truth personality of Godhead.
understanding the supreme absolute truth personality.
Therefore, only by hearing from Krishna or from his devotee in Krishna consciousness
Therefore, only by hearing from Krishna or from his devotee
can one understand the science of Krishna.
can one understand the science of
Srimad Bhagvatam, Canto 2, Chapter 3, verse text number 13. Sonaka uvacha
Shonaka Vacha
it avivyaritam raja
Itya Vivyaritam Raja
nisamya bharatar sabha
Nisamya Bharata Shabha
kimanyat pristavan babuyo
Imanyat Prishtavan Bhuyo
vayasa kim risim kavim.
Vayasa Kim Vishim Kavim.
Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Sonaka said, the son of Vyasadeva, Srila Sukadeva Goswami, was a highly learned sage and was able to describe things in a poetic manner. What did Maharaj Pariksit again inquire from him after hearing all that he had said? Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. A pure devotee of the Lord automatically develops all godly qualities, and some of the prominent features of those qualities are as follows. He is kind, peaceful, truthful, equable, faultless, magnanimous, mild, clean, non-possessive, a well-wisher to all, satisfied, surrendered to Krishna, without hankering, simple, fixed, self-controlled, a balanced eater, sane, mannerly, prideless, grave, sympathetic, friendly, poetic, expert, and silent. Out of these 26 prominent features of a devotee, as described by Krishna Das Kaviraja in his Chaitanya Charitamrita, the qualification of being poetic is especially mentioned herein in relation to Sukadeva Goswami. The presentation of Srimad Bhagavatam by his recitation is the highest poetic contribution. He was a self-realized, learned sage. In other words, he was a poet amongst the sages. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Sonaka said, the son of Vyasadeva, Srila Sukadeva Goswami, was a highly learned sage and was able to describe things in a poetic manner. What did Maharaj Pariksit again inquire from him after hearing all that he had said? Well, this is significant because it proves that if one simply engages in devotional service without any material motive, the only motive should be to please Guru and Krishna, and one should always be under the tutelage of the spiritual master. Now that's the most important point right there. Many neophyte devotees, after a short period in Krishna consciousness, let's say 1, 2 years, or 3 years, they think they know everything. And therefore, they begin to make decisions on their own. And they make big mistakes when they do that. And they basically insult other devotees, and thinking that they're justified in making decisions on their own. And therefore, their whole spiritual life is stunted, because they think they can make decisions independent of Guru, meaning Siksha and Diksha Guru. Therefore, one should always ask questions before they begin to make independent decisions. Just like one person was telling me, usually these people don't ask questions, they tell their guru what they're going to do. And sometimes they don't even tell the guru what they're going to do, they just go ahead and do it. See? And that's a formula for failure in spiritual life. All of us, from the so-called most advanced devotees right down to the neophyte devotee, must always get verification from senior devotees, right? And there's always going to be some senior devotees. So what they do is they tell the guru what they're going to do, and that is very insulting, actually. Extremely insulting, because it's rather than telling the guru what they're going to do or not saying anything and going ahead and doing it, they should ask a humble question to verify if what they were planning to do is right or wrong. So there's one person told me what they were going to do, did not ask advice, although I gave it, and they went ahead and did what they were going to do, and now they're in a big mess, right? And after 2 years of thinking what they did was right, now they're admitting that they did something wrong and they should have listened to my advice. So this goes on all the time. This is the disease of neophyte devotees. And unless they heal that disease, they're going to go on making major mistakes, and eventually they're going to go away from Krishna consciousness and blame the devotees. But actually they can only blame themselves. So, and this is explained in Bhagavad Gita, 4th chapter, 34th verse, where it says, Tadvidi paripatena sevaya. Upadeksyami te jnanam jnaninas tattvadarshanaha. Just try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master. Inquire from him submissively and render service unto him. The self-realized souls can impart knowledge unto you because they have seen the truth. In the purport, Prabhupada says, the path of spiritual realization is undoubtedly difficult. The Lord therefore advises us to approach a bona fide spiritual master in a line of disciplic succession from the Lord himself. No one can be a bona fide spiritual master without following this principle of disciplic succession. The Lord is the original spiritual master, and a person in a disciplic succession can convey the message of the Lord as it is to his disciple. No one can be spiritually realized by manufacturing his own process, as in the fashion of the foolish pretenders. The Bhagavatam 6.3.19 says, Dharmam tu shakshat bhagavat pranitam. The path of religion is directly enunciated by the Lord. Therefore, mental speculation or dry arguments cannot help lead one to the right path, nor by independent study of books of knowledge can one progress in spiritual life. One has to approach a bona fide spiritual master to receive the knowledge. Such a spiritual master should be accepted in full surrender, and one should serve the spiritual master like a menial servant without false prestige. Satisfaction of the self-realized spiritual master is the secret of advancement in spiritual life. Inquiries and submission constitute the proper combination for spiritual understanding. You notice it says inquiries and submission constitute the proper combination for spiritual understanding. This is the mistake neophyte devotees make. After a couple of years, they think they know everything, and they don't have to ask submissive questions and inquire, is this right or is this wrong? They just go ahead and do it. And they get themselves in a mess, and then they leave Krishna consciousness blaming devotees or blaming Prabhupada, but actually they only have themselves to blame because they refuse to double check everything they do. They just act, thinking they know everything. I'm chanting 16 rounds, I have Bhakti Shastri, blah, 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 I know what I'm doing. Right? So this is why devotees leave. It's the beginning of leaving, when they start acting independently, thinking they know everything. So inquiries and submission constitute the proper combination for spiritual understanding. Unless there is submission and service, inquiries from the learned spiritual master will not be effective. Unless there is submission and service, inquiries from the learned spiritual master will not be effective. One must be able to pass the test of the spiritual master. And when he sees the genuine desire of the disciple, he automatically blesses the disciple with genuine spiritual understanding. So, what's the test of the spiritual master? The test is that the devotee or disciple will not act independently, but will ask advice before they act. See? And then, when they get the advice, it's up to them to take it. Just like I've been saying class after class that mundane education is rejected. If you send your kid to school, you are abusing that kid because the schools are full of nonsense. They're not teaching knowledge, they're teaching ignorance. And the kids become conditioned by it. One example of it is the first generation of kids that have grown up in this temple, once they go to college, they lose their interest in Krishna consciousness. And most of them are in that case right now. Because the parents push them to be academically, let's say, qualified to get jobs as in IT. And because of that, they have to hear all kinds of nonsense. Just like if you go to work now, you have to get training in gender neutrality. And from now on, if you want to work for Facebook or Amazon or Microsoft, you have to learn what terms of gender you address every individual. And every individual now, when they introduce themselves, they'll tell you the term of gender or the term of address that they accept. That means all the other terms they accept, like Miss or Mrs. or he or she, if you use them and it's not the one they chose, you could get fired from your job. Did you know that? You don't know that? Yeah. Do you know that? Yeah. You can ask Rajaman's wife. She just got a job in Facebook, and she has to go through gender neutrality training in order to get the job. And if she doesn't follow the rules, she'll be fired. And this is what they're teaching kids now in high school. So to send your kid to these schools is actually abuse of the child. And I've been saying this over and over again. I printed a booklet that explains Prabhupada's pedagogy or how to educate your child, and nobody listens. The devotees now are the last ones who listen because they think they know everything. So the alternative is that you homeschool the child. And homeschooling is very effective because you have control over what they're going to learn. But you have no control over what they're going to learn when they go to school. Very little control. You can go to the parent-teacher meetings, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't change anything. They're going to go ahead and give them all this sensitivity classes, which basically are all nonsense. They teach them to be sinful, thinking that it's right. That's what's going on. So, it says, one must be able to pass the test of the spiritual master, and when he sees the genuine desire of the disciple, he automatically blesses the disciple with genuine spiritual understanding. In this verse, both blind following and absurd inquiries are condemned. Not only should one hear submissively from the spiritual master, but one must also get a clear understanding from him in submission and service and inquiries. Submission, service, and inquiries. That's the culture of the guru-disciple relationship. A bona fide spiritual master is by nature very kind toward the disciple. Therefore, when the student is submissive and is always ready to render service, the reciprocation of knowledge and inquiries becomes perfect. So as soon as the disciple refuses to be submissive, acts on their own speculative concepts or thoughts, and basically insult other devotees and insult the guru, they are on the door. They're right at the door to leave Krishna consciousness. And unless people understand this, there's going to be a lot of turmoil in their lives. Why are we in the material world? Because we rejected Krishna's instructions. That's why we're here. And in order to be happy in the material world, on our merry road to hell, you have to forget Krishna. And that's exactly what modern education does. It puts doubts in your mind in the existence of God. So if you send your kid to these public schools or to these colleges, which are the den of iniquity, you're actually abusing them. Even though you chant 16 rounds, you're abusing your own child. It's just like abortion. Abortion, a mother kills her own child, and sending them to these schools is not abortion. But you're killing the desire in the child to become Krishna conscious. That's what they do. That's their whole technique. That's their whole strategy. And unless we understand this, we will become later on very sorry when you see that your kid, although they might act nice, they might be mostly in the mode of goodness, but they're not really interested in practicing Krishna consciousness. Okay, so, but if someone practices Krishna consciousness, which means the student is submissive and is always ready to render service, the reciprocation of knowledge and inquiries becomes perfect. Then one will develop naturally these 26 qualities of a devotee. They'll be kind, peaceful, truthful, equable, faultless, magnanimous, mild, clean, non-possessive, a well-wisher to all satisfied. A well-wisher to all, satisfied, surrendered to Krishna, without hankering, simple, fixed, self-controlled, a balanced eater, sane, mannerly, prideless, grave, sympathetic, friendly, poetic, expert, and silent. These 26 qualities naturally develop by what? By the student or disciple being submissive, always ready to render service, and then the reciprocation of knowledge and inquiries becomes perfect. The whole spiritual life is based on inquiries and answers. Bhagavad Gita is inquiries by Arjuna and answers by Krishna. Srimad Bhagvatam is inquiries by Parikshit Maharaj and answers by Sukadeva Goswami. Inquiries by Sukadeva Goswami and inquiries by sages in Naimisaranya and answers by Sutta Goswami. And then inquiries by Sonaka Rishi and other sages, and answers by Sutta Goswami, again by Sutta Goswami. So therefore, you see that this questions and answers is spiritual life. But asking the questions to bona fide spiritual authorities, and then getting their answers. Otherwise, they go to school, they ask questions, and they get nonsense answers from demons. And that's what's going on in school. They ask a question. Excuse me, how many genders are there? There are 60 genders. And if you don't get them right, you'll lose your job. Okay, so you're going to get answers like that. But before, when we went to school, there was a man and there was a woman. There was a he and a she. Now there's he, she, it, this thing, that thing. Before there was a wife. Now it's called a partner. Before there was this, and now it's called something else. So this is the world of words. And all these words just confuse people. They don't even know what gender they are. They don't know whether they should use a man's toilet or the woman's toilet, you see. So they get it mixed up. So if we want to establish Krishna consciousness, we have to stick to the principle of tat vidi pratipatena paripasnena sevaya. You have to approach Guru with submissiveness, asking significant questions, and rendering service. That is spiritual life. If you make decisions on your own, not asking questions to know whether it's right or wrong, that's not spiritual life. That's what the demons do. They just act independently. See? And even if they hear good advice, they don't follow it. Right? Okay, so it says here that out of these 26 qualities, are these 26 prominent features of a devotee, as described by Krishnadas Kaviraj in his Chaitanya Charitamrita. The qualification of being poetic is especially mentioned herein in relation to Sukadeva Goswami. The presentation of Srimad Bhagvatam by his recitation is the highest poetic contribution. He was a self-realized learned sage. In other words, he was a poet amongst the sages. So, if we think that we can get educated by reading history books, by reading technical books like JavaScript, and learning, all the different genders there are now, all the 60 genders instead of 64 qualities of 64 qualities of Krishna. We're learning the 60 qualities, the 60 differentiations of gender. Our life is nonsense. If you go through the process of learning that stuff, you'll be nonsense. Just like instead of learning Srimad Bhagvatam, kids learn Harry Potter, right? They can tell you all these stories about Harry Potter, but you ask them some question about Srimad Bhagvatam, and they say, well, it's not that important. Harry Potter is more important. That's what all the kids are talking about. So this is the sad state of ISKCON, as well as the world. Unless we become convinced to follow Prabhupada's instructions and to read the Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam in the company of devotees and get answers to all our questions on a regular basis, because every day we learn something new. Just like yesterday, we learned what it meant, Nirbande Krishna Sambande, Yukta Vairagyam Uchyate. It's a very important verse by Rupa Goswami. And what does it say? Well, Prabhupada says that he says, but the thing is that Nirbanda, Krishna Sambande, whenever there is connection with Krishna, that also becomes Krishna. This is a subtle form of philosophical understanding. Nirbanda, Krishna Sambande, if there is relationship with Krishna, therefore the Sahajiyas, they do not read Bhagavad Gita. They say, we have nothing to do with Bhagavad Gita. they jump over to the Srimad Bhagavatam 10th canto, Krishna's Rasa Leela, as if Krishna is connected with Rasa Leela and not with this Leela. This fighting Leela pastimes and the Rasa Leela pastime, they are all the same because Krishna is the center. Krishna being center. Whatever in connection with Krishna is there. That becomes also Krishna. This is the idea. Anasakta tasya vishayan yataratam upayunjitaha. Nirbandha Krishna sambandhe yukta vairagyam yuchyate. This is the instruction of Srila Rupa Goswami in this Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. So just like we, in propagating Krishna consciousness, we have to deal with money or persons who are not Krishna conscious, outsiders. We have to deal with them. But when we go to outsider or when we deal with money, there is relationship with Krishna, Krishna Sambandha. So Rupa Goswami has distinguished the Prapanchikataya Buddhya Hari Sambandhu Vastana Mumukshubhihi Parityagjo Vairagyam Falgu Katyate. Prapanchikataya means material. So Prapanchikataya Buddhya Hari Sambandhi Vastuna. Everything that has got connection with Krishna, because ultimately everything is Krishna's energy. The material world is also manifestation of Krishna's energy. Bhumir apo nalo vayu. So when you use everything in the service of Krishna according to the instructions of Shiksha and Diksha gurus, who are simply going to repeat Krishna's instructions, then that's Krishna conscious, although those things that you're dealing with are mundane. So this is what we learned yesterday. Prabhupada says, even mundane activities dovetailed with service to the Lord are also calculated to be transcendental or approved Kaivalya affairs. Kaivalya means transcendental affairs. So something mundane becomes spiritual. But what's the key point here when it says, even mundane activities dovetailed in service to the Lord? Well, what is service to the Lord? It's functioning under the instruction of Guru. Shiksha and Diksha Guru. That's what service to the Lord is. Do you know what service to the Lord? Did you know what service to the Lord was before you joined Krishna consciousness? No, you didn't know what it was. Did you know that you could engage mundane things in the service of the Lord and they become spiritual? No, you didn't know that. Did you know that by dovetailing normal things in your life, they become spiritual? No, you didn't know that. You thought that there's a difference between mundane things and so-called spiritual things, and that spiritual things actually are fantasy. That's what they teach you. They're not actual facts. The real facts are science. We come from monkeys, everything started by Big Bang, there's string theory, there's quarks, there's dark holes, blah, blah, blah. All speculation, all nonsense ideas. There's gender neutrality, there's so many different genders. There's no longer man, woman, there's 60 different genders now. So this is all nonsense. But we're accepting that nonsense blindly, even though we chant 16 rounds, even though we sometimes come to classes, and even though we do service, which is good, but service without knowledge is a temporary thing. One day you'll say, why am I doing this? Why, I should be spending more time on the stock market and at work. This is a waste of time. I might lose my job. Then what will I do? Well, did people exist in the past without working in Microsoft? Yes. For millions of years, people have existed in India and in the world without Amazon, Microsoft, Facebook, Twitter, all these companies. They did pretty well, didn't they? So we should not be afraid of anything except misinformation and independent actions without double-checking with bona fide authorities. So then again, Prabhupada says, the material world means these 5 elements, gross and subtle, earth, water, fire, air, ether, these are gross, and mind, intelligence, ego, these are subtle. These elements, material elements, Krishna says, Bina me pakritir astada. These material elements, they are separated, but they are my energy. They are my energy. The same example, just like the cloud. Cloud is created by the sun. It is the sun's energy which creates the cloud. You know, by temperature, the seawater is evaporated, forms into gas, that is the cloud. So cloud is created by the energy of the sun. But when there's cloud, you cannot see the sun. Sun is covered. Similarly, material energy is Krishna's energy. But when you become covered by this material energy, you do not see Krishna. This is the position. So we have to use our intelligence. That is described by Rupa Goswami. Prapanchikataya buddhya harisambandhi vastuna mumukshu bihi pratityaga. Mumukshu, especially the Mayavadis who are after liberation, to merge into the existence of the Supreme. Mumukshu, moksha, they, Mayavada, they say, everything is Maya. Brahma Satyam Jagan Mitya. This world is false. Only Brahman is reality. But we say that why the Jagat, the world, should be false if it is coming from the reality. We do not agree with them. We do not accept that this world is false. No. We can say it is temporary manifestation, but it is not false. Why it is false? We are living in this house. If somebody, some rascal says it is false, why false? We are utilizing this house. We are utilizing this microphone. We are utilizing the dictaphone. Why it is false? There is sambandha. Sambandha means relationship to Krishna. There is relationship with Krishna. Anything material made of earth, water, fire, air, they are Krishna's energies. Therefore, there is direct relationship with Krishna. And if Krishna is reality, why his energy should be false? No. We must know how to utilize it. You see, so what do they teach you in school? They teach you that there's no God, and there's no relationship of everything to God. There's only matter. That's why you should reject this modern education, because it's going to mislead you and your children. You're going to be confused all the time. And I'm telling you, don't send your kids to these schools. They're going to get poisoned by this nonsense that they're teaching. And Prabhupada said the same thing. So similarly, in this battlefield, Krishna is there, and all the living entities. Some of them are soldiers, some of them are commander-in-chiefs, some of them this, that, or the chariot, or the ground. Everything Krishna's energy. So if we remember that everything is manifestation of Krishna's energy, there's no question of materialism. It is all spiritual energy. So nirbandha, Krishna sambandhe. So we have to use them for Krishna. Here, all of them have gathered. So what do they teach kids in school? They teach them to use things for their own sense gratification. How can you consider that education? That's the reason why people stay in the material world. They're convinced that everything should be used for their own sense gratification. And by associating with such people closely, 6 to 8 hours a day, eventually, it rubs off on these kids. And then after years of going to these schools, they end up thinking, I should work hard like an ass for some company like Microsoft or Twitter or Facebook or Amazon or this one or this startup or whatever, so that I can make money and spend it for myself. That's what they're teaching your kids. And that's completely opposite of what we just heard that Prabhupada is explaining. So, therefore, there is another Krishna's energy. Krishna appears. Paritranaya sadhunam vinasaya saduskritam. Bhagavad Gita 4:8. He wanted to kill all the demons. That is another side of his business. As one side, paritranaya sadhunam, to give protection to the devotees. The other side is to vanquish all the demons. Just like if you want to grow paddy on the field, so first of all, you have to destroy all the unwanted weeds. Then you grow the seeds. It will come out nicely. So these two things are required: destruction and construction. Both the things are Krishna's activities or different energies. So you cannot accept one thing, giving up the other side. We have to understand that both sides, they are working in different manifestation of Krishna's energy. Parasya Shakti Vividaya Sruyate, Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya 13.65 in the purport. In the Vedas, it is said that the Absolute has got multi-energies. So one energy is working in one way, another energy is working in another way. Parasya Shakti Vividaya Sruyate, Swabhaviki Jnanabala Kriyacha. Just like here also, when we do something, we require varieties of energies to make that thing perfect. So everything, Krishna, Krishna's, this material world or spiritual world, everything is working in order under different energies. So these, I mean to say, warriors, name mentioning, we should not neglect. So in other words, in the first chapter of Bhagavad Gita, there are a lot of names. You know, there's Dhritarashtra, there's Duryodhana, there's Kripacharya, there's this name, that name. Don't think that these are not important. Let me go to the second chapter and skip the first chapter. No, they're just as important as any other. The first chapter is just as important as any other chapter in Bhagavad Gita. So Krishna wanted to gather all the demoniac power in that battlefield of Kurukshetra and kill them. That was his plan. So there is a plan of Krishna. Nirbandha Krishna Sambandhe. We should not be attached to things as there, but we should try to understand that there is relationship with Krishna. And as soon as there is relationship with Krishna, we shall properly utilize it. That is Krishna consciousness. That's what we're educating our kids. But somewhere or other, they're falling off the cliff because they're being pushed into mundane academia, which is mundane diseasedia. It's all disease. It's all contaminated. It's all false. It's all misleading education. There's nothing there of any benefit to anyone. Now, you might say, well, why can't we use mundane education in the service of Krishna? Can you use Big Bang in the service of Krishna? Can you use gender neutrality in the service of Krishna? Can you use, we all come from monkeys and Darwinism in the service of Krishna? No, you can't. You know, you have to use what you learn from Bhagavad Gita in the service of Krishna. They're not teaching we come from monkeys, everything started with a Big Bang in Bhagavad Gita. Everything started from Krishna. Krishna is present in everything. Krishna is the goal of everything. Everything belongs to Krishna. Therefore, you should use everything in Krishna's service. That's what you learn in Bhagavad Gita. So, therefore, as soon as there's relationship with Krishna, we shall properly utilize it. That is Krishna consciousness. As soon as we understand that there is relationship with Krishna, Nirbandha Krishna Sambandhe, everything can be utilized for Krishna. Krishna is not a stereotype stagnant block. Krishna is a dynamic force. Therefore, everything can be dovetailed in the service of Krishna. Simply one should learn the art under proper guidance, how to utilize. Then that will be perfect form of Krishna consciousness. So, these are two very important texts that we just read. First is a lecture on Bhagavad Gita, first chapter, 4th and 5th verse, given in London, July 10th, 1973. And the second is lecture on Bhagavad Gita again, Bhagavad Gita, first chapter, verses 4 and 5, London. Oh, it's the same lecture. It's just two parts from the same lecture. So, Bhagavad Gita, first chapter, verses 4 and 5, London, July 10th, 1973. Okay, are there any questions?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. So my question is about decisions.
What?
Decisions.
Yes.
And you said we should take advice of a senior devotee before taking the decision. So my
Makes
question
sense, doesn't it?
Yes, Maharaj. So my question is, how do we draw the balance in terms of we don't want to go bother the senior devotee.
That's nonsense.
For trivial.
That's nonsense.
Like, for example.
That's nonsense. See, that's what you call opening the door to be disobedient. We don't want to work. We don't want to disturb the senior devotee. Therefore, I'll just make a decision on my own. What do we say? Every important decision should be checked and double checked.
Like, because in the purport there is mention about absurd inquiries.
The what?
Absurd inquiries.
Absurd inquiries.
Yeah. So what is absurd and what is not absurd? I think that's where I'm struggling.
Inquiries that have nothing to do with devotional service. They're absurd.
Okay.
So your life should be always engaged in devotional service. So
Yes.
if you're going to ask a question that has nothing to do with devotional service,
Mm-hmm.
then that's an absurd question.
Yeah, I'm wondering what might be a good example.
Well, one good example is, can I buy a cake in Safeway for the birthday? Can I buy Dreyer's ice cream instead of Breyer's ice cream? Can I buy Breyer's vanilla cream ice cream instead of just vanilla ice cream? Breyer's vanilla ice cream.
Okay.
You know. So, yeah, I mean, you can't use vanilla cream ice cream. It has bad, even though it's Breyer's. And all Dreyer's ice creams are bad, all of them. So, but even there are a few of Breyer's ice creams that are bad also. Okay, so you can ask questions even on what kind of ice cream should you buy, or how can I make my own ice cream so I don't have to be confused by vanilla cream, regular vanilla, this thing, Breyer's, Dreyer's,
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anything that doesn't have to do with devotional service is a nonsense question.
Okay.
Right? And then sometimes there's confusion. You're not sure if this thing is nonsense or not nonsense. You have to ask.
When in doubt, ask.
Yeah. You don't say, oh, what's the difference? He said you can buy Breyer's, so I'll buy Breyer's vanilla cream. No.
Okay.
Don't assume anything.
Sure.
Assume that, like Lord Chaitanya, he said, my guru said I'm an idiot. I don't have good intelligence to discern what is Maya, what is not Maya. So let me always ask my guru questions to get answers even to the most trivial things.
Okay.
Because I'm an idiot. Lord Chaitanya said that. If he says that, shouldn't we say that also? Yes.
Yes.
Your what question? What, your continual question?
Prabhuji's question, like when to ask questions. So our everyday lifestyle, like whatever we do in the material, is impacting spirituality. Even though it doesn't look like it's a spiritual question, but even that material question has lot to do with our activities to the spirituality. So is it okay?
True. True.
Ask, like for example, job questions, like family matters, and all those indirectly impact our spirituality. And
Yes.
there is confusion and dilemma which way to go.
Yeah, so anything that is related to devotional service, you must ask the question. So everything you're doing in your life should be related to devotional service. Anything that's not related to devotional service, it's Maya. It's basically you're walking into the door that says heaven, but actually it's hell, right? Because you think you know what's right. We should never think that we know everything. We don't know anything, right? Did we know anything before we came to Krishna consciousness? No, we were doing all things the wrong way. So even when we're in Krishna consciousness, there's going to be many questions that we have to ask because you have to make decisions every day. And some of those decisions, you're not sure if it's right or wrong. Yeah. So if you say, no, we don't want to bother the advanced devotees, we'll just speculate on our own. Say that you're opening the door to leave Krishna consciousness when you do that.
Mm.
You know, the door opens a little bit,
Okay.
and then the more you do it, it keeps opening more, and then all of a sudden it's a big door, and you just say, well, it's open, I'll just walk through it. You know.
Mm. Yeah.
That's duplicity.
Huh?
Duplicity.
Duplicity. Well, you're cheating yourself.
Atmavanchan.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Maharaj.
See, coronavirus is a good thing. It taught all of us that you don't have to send your kids to school. Huh?
No option for next year, schools are opening.
No, the option is, you teach them at home. That way you have control over what they learn and they don't associate with the demons. And you're not putting them in the trust of a demoniac teacher who is breaking all the rules and regulations of Krishna consciousness. That's not a teacher, that's a misleader. I wouldn't do that.